Today we're going to be working with graphing quadratic functions. You should have a worksheet titled N6-2. We're going to look at number 1, which is the graph of y equals x squared. That's going to be our parent function for our quadratic graph. If you remember, our quadratic graph makes the shape of a U. What I want you to do is plug y equals x squared into your calculator, and I want you to go ahead and graph it. If you look at the table by hitting second graph, you will see all of your x values, and I want you to fill out the table using the x values from -3 to +3. So what you should end up with is a table of y values that look like this. And it should say 9410149. And I want you to go ahead and sketch it to the graph on the right hand side. Okay, we're going to be working with the quadratic function. So first what I want to talk about is going to be the translation form. And if you look, you should see an equation that says y equals a parenthesis x minus h squared plus k. Your h and your k are going to be your vertex. What we're going to do is look at number 2. Y equals 2 parenthesis x minus 5 squared minus 8. The easiest way to answer these questions on a vertex, let's first actually look and label our a, our h, and our k. So if you notice, the number 2, the number -5, and the number -8 are all in the same location as the a, the h, and the k in my formula. So let's label it. For my a, what number do I have? 2 is correct. For my h, what number do I have? -5. And for my k, what number do I have? A -8. Now make sure if there's a negative sign in my equation, I use the negative symbol. So in order to find my vertex, over here we had said that my vertex was h comma k. The one thing you need to note about my h, whenever I write the vertex, the h will always change signs. So if it's a negative in my equation, it's going to come out as a positive number. And if it's a positive, it's going to come out as a negative. So in my equation, my h is a -5. So then what would I put it for when I write the vertex? +5 is correct. The other thing you need to know about k, k will not change signs. It will not change signs. So once I've located where it is, I have a -8. That vertex will stay at a -8. So the vertex for number 2 should be 5, -8. As far as filling out the table, you can pick whatever points you want, and then I want you to go ahead and sketch the graph to the right hand side. Okay, so remember, when I'm looking at my h is going to change signs, and the k will not change signs. So let's look at problem number 2. We're looking at problem number 3. So problem number 3 says I got -1 parenthesis x plus 5 squared. Now if you notice, in this particular problem, I actually only have an a and an h. So what happens when I don't have a k? If I don't have it, what number is it going to be? That's right, 0. If it doesn't exist, it's going to be 0. So my h is a +5, and then my a is a -1. So remember what I said about our h when we plug it in as a vertex? It's going to change signs. So for this vertex, I have a -5, 0. And again, I want you to fill out the table. It doesn't matter which points you use, and then I want you to graph it on the right-hand side. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Let's look at number 4. Now in number 4, again, remember we're trying to label our a, our h, and our k. So go back and look at that formula on the first page. And if you notice my a, there's a negative sign there, but there's no number. So what number should I put there to hold its place? That's right, a -1. If I look for the h, do I see an h in this problem? Are there any parentheses? No. So if I don't see it, what number holds the place? 0. And then my k is going to be a +3. Now when I told you that you were going to change signs for h, 0 does not have a positive or a negative sign with it. So for this vertex, it's going to be 0, 3. And again, I want you to fill out the table using any points you choose and go ahead and sketch the graph to the right. The next thing we're going to look at is root form. I want you to go ahead and highlight root form for me. Okay, my root form is y equals a parenthesis x minus r1 close parenthesis and parenthesis x minus r2 close parenthesis. And if you notice what it says, r1 and r2 are our roots. Okay, so the first thing I want us to do is look at number 5. My problem is y equals 2 parenthesis x minus 3 close parenthesis parenthesis x plus 1 close parenthesis. So in order for me to find my roots, I want you to make a note of this somewhere on your paper. In order for me to find my roots, I will change the signs of both R1 and R2. So both numbers will change. So let's locate R1 and R2. Here's my R1. And here's my R2. I have a -3 and I have a +1. So if I'm going to change the signs wherever it says the roots are, I'm actually going to write a +3 and a -1. So again, remember my roots will change. Now, in order for us to find the vertex for root form, it's a little bit different than when I was using the translation form. The translation form, I was actually able to just locate the h and the k and come up with the vertex. So in order to find the vertex for root form, we have to do a couple of steps. So first, in order for me to find my x value, I am going to take the sum of my two roots, which were 3 and -1, and I'm going to add them together and divide by 2. So here I'll have 3 plus a -1 divided by 2. 3 plus a -1 is a -2, and -2 divided by 2 gives me a -1. So that is actually my x value of my vertex. You will follow the same steps when we get to any other example asking about root form. Now, in order for me to find what the y value is, I'm going to take this x value that I just found, -1, and I'm going to plug it all the way back into my equation in both places where it says x minus 3 and x plus 1. So let's plug this in. I would have y equals 2 parenthesis -1 minus 3 parenthesis -1 plus 1. So when I multiply that out, -1 minus 3 is a -4, and -1 plus 1 is 0, and remember, anything multiplied by 0 is going to be 0. So my vertex for problem number 5 is -1, 0. So what I would like you to do on the right hand side of the graph is plot both roots and plot the vertex. And again, when you fill out the table, you may use any points as long as the vertex is on the table. So now let's look at problem 6, and we're going to do the exact same steps. Okay, first we're going to find the roots. So remember, we're going to locate R1 and R2, which in this case, they're both -2. And remember, for R1 and R2, when I pull them out as roots, I will change the sign. So here, my roots are actually the same. They are both positive 2. Now let's do the same steps we did in problem 5 to come up with my x and my y value for my vertex. So remember, we add the two x values, or excuse me, the two roots together and divide by 2. So here I have 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my x value for this for the vertex on number 6 is positive 2. And remember, for us to find the y value, we're going to take that answer and plug it right back into the same equation. So here I have negative 1 parenthesis 2 minus 2 parenthesis 2 minus 2 again. Okay, and here 2 minus 2 is 0. If anything is multiplied by 0, my answer is always 0. So the vertex for number 6 is 2, 0. So I want you to go ahead and graph that on the far right hand side and again fill out the table. You should have all 6 of these problems done before class, and then we will work on the assignment in class as well. Have a good night.